Hey guys, Foxdrop here. It's a dark day for me today and of course therefore by extension the world, and today I feel I'm left with no choice but to regrettably officially announce my retirement from League of Legends. It's been fun, thanks for sticking by me for all this time. Okay, no, I'm just kidding, but today does mark the day my baby got touched in a bad way, and no, this has nothing to do with the BBC. Today, Riot released their patch notes for the upcoming PvE release, and contained within, amongst other things, nerfs to Lee Sin. Here are the nerfs. Lee Sin's ultimate, Dragon Rage, now does 150, 300 and 450 damage at rank 1, 2 and 3 respectively, down from 200, 400 and 600. For those of you who are terrible at maths, or whose lifestyle living in first world comforts has rendered the task of simple mental maths to be too much effort, don't worry, I completely understand. That's a 50, 100 and 150 base damage nerf depending on the rank. Before I talk about the nerf, I want to cover my ass from two inevitable comments down below in the comments section. Firstly, yes, Lee Sin is my sweetheart, but no, that doesn't mean I will blindly defend everything about him through passionate bias, so you should still find this video insightful, hopefully. And secondly, yes, last season I said I was going to stop playing Lee Sin, but in that video I did mention it was because I felt that in high elo, picking mindless tanks was just overall better and more effective than the high risk moderate reward of Lee Sin, which at the time it was, but as nerfs has gone through and the meta has shifted, times have changed. So first things first, what is my overall opinion of the nerf? Well, perhaps surprisingly for you, I actually think it's okay. Lee Sin right now is in a very strong spot, and for reasons that I'll mention in a bit, I think the nerfs are not out of line for him. In addition to that, I think that the way Lee Sin was nerfed is actually pretty smart. Having an ultimate nerf, and one that really only kicks in, get it, at the high ranks of his ulti, means his early game is not changed too much. Lee Sin's win rate is actually almost 56%, which is the second highest of all junglers if a game finishes in the first 25 minutes, so basically, the nerf shouldn't stop Lee Sin shining in his element. Which is good. It means the nerfs are more targeted towards the sense that he's not only a great early game champion, but also someone who is a little too strong when playing in the areas that weren't his forte. I mean, that makes sense, right? It's good game design for a champion to have a standout point, but who also is unremarkable outside of that. Right now, Lee Sin is meant to fall off outside the early game, but he still rocks about 50% win rate going way into the late game, which is a little bit too high for such an early game dominant champion. Lastly, the nerf only affects his base damage, not his AD scaling. This means that this nerf will hit tank Lee Sin harder than damage Lee Sin, and I'm all for making people who build tank deal less damage. It also means that when I get reported for playing my 6 Infinity Edge Lee Sin build and Riot tell me that whereas I may want to play IE Lee, my teammates do not want me to play it, I can just tell them that they nerf tank Lee too hard, so I had no choice. Anyway, that pretty much sums up my thoughts on the nerfs themselves, but that doesn't address whether I think Lee Sin needed to be nerfed in general. For that, I'm going to get pretty heavy into statistics, so buckle in, dickheads. It's going to get thick. So, let's take a look at some stats for Lee Sin. For the past 5 patches, Lee Sin has been the most picked jungler out of any champion. More people are playing Lee than any other jungler, and not just by a small margin. Lee Sin has around a 45% pick rate, and in comparison, Graves, the second most popular jungle champion, has just over 15%. So he's not popular, he's very popular. Now, popularity does not necessarily equate to quality, not by itself. I mean, just look at the fact that Nickelback has had numerous multi-platinum albums. I did a Nickelback joke, those are still cool, right? I'm just checking. However, when you combine high pick rates with high win rates, then things start getting kind of ugly. That combination does start to suggest that something is arguably entering OP territory. And for the last 2 patches, Lee Sin has been sitting at almost a 52% win rate. That's not amazingly high, it barely puts him in the top 10 for junglers, but considering everyone and his nan is playing him, like I mentioned before, it's a bad combo. This is the thing about win rates, is that by themselves they rarely paint a full picture. Something can have a pretty high win rate, which is usually anything above 52 or 53%, but not be seen as overpowered. For example, last season Skarner and Rammus were both in the top 5 for win rate junglers at various points in the season. But none of these champions were remotely popular, often with a pick rate of like 1 or 2%, and none were considered overpowered or in line for nerfs. Why? Mostly because the only people playing them were the one-tricks who were actually really good at the champion, and not people who pick them just because they're meta without actually knowing how to play them. Thus, this inflates their win rate. If these champions were more popular, you could bet that their win rates would fall. So whereas Lee Sin's win rate may be nothing spectacular, in context it does mean a bit more. For comparison, when Graves got nerfed at the end of last season, he was in the top 5 for both win and pick rates, with a similar win rate to how Lee Sin is now. Side note to mention here as well, despite Lee Sin being the most popular jungler for ages, he's only really been a problem since the end of Season 6. During Season 6, his win rate wasn't even above 50%, and this is usually a pretty good indicator that champion isn't OP when they're popular, more so a solid yet far from flawless meta champion. In addition to this, in my opinion, when high skill cap champions have a high win rate above 50%, especially when they're pretty popular too, then there is a problem. This is because these champions are designed to be high risk, high reward. If you learn their intricacies and mechanics, you will be rewarded. But if you're an average user of the champion and don't unleash their full potential, you'll probably suck. So if they have high win rates, and like I say, especially when that's combined with high popularity, it often means that these champions are being successful even when not played to their full potential, which makes them extremely oppressive in more experienced hands. For example, let's now take a look at Vayne, Zed, Yasuo, and of course Lee Sin. These are some of the more mechanically intense characters in the game, and therefore considered some of the highest skill cap champions in the game. I'm sure a fair few of you will scoff at that statement like, oh my goodness, Yasuo isn't high skill cap, he just has... Okay, we get it. Objectively speaking though, in the context of the champions that do exist in League, they're up there. Not to mention the difference between a beginner playing these champions and a veteran is pretty astronomical. Anyway, out of these champions, I think it's fair to argue that Yasuo and Zed are not considered particularly OP in the hands of the average player, whereas Vayne is definitely on the OP spectrum right now. In fact, she did just receive some nerfs. Now looking at the stats of these champions, both Zed and Yasuo are sitting in the 48% win rate mark with a 7% pick rate in mid, equivalent to roughly top 10 in pick rate. Don't worry about me classifying Yasuo as a mid laner, his top stats aren't any better. Essentially what this means is that they're pretty popular, but their win rates are pretty wank, though it's worth noting that Zed's ban rate is the second highest in the game, so that does affect his pick rate as well. Lee Sin's Season 6 stats were in a similar state, and as such he didn't get nerfed the whole season. In fact, he actually got buffed twice. Vayne, on the other hand, has close to a 52% win rate while being picked in over 30% of all games, so she's even more popular than Zed and Yasuo, meaning that her win rate should arguably be lower as the pool of players picking her is diluted by those who aren't as experienced. But she's actually got a pretty high win rate considering. Now these statistics combined with the fact she recently got nerfed should be a good indicator of how Vayne was in fact OP. That and anyone with a working pair of eyes could see that that bitch was off the rails. Now for Lee Sin to have similar statistics as Vayne right now, it does paint a this is too strong picture, at least in my eyes. But yeah, overall guys, this won't kill Lee Sin. He's still going to be strong. His win rate will probably fall, but you know, there's a nerf after all. But if you're still good and solid on him, he'll still work. But either way, this nerf hasn't even been confirmed to be put into the game just yet. It's just been announced that it'll be put on the PvE. So it will be put on the PvE soon, and then after that, it might hit live servers unless I decide to change some things. So it's not 100% going to go through, though most likely it probably will. But either way, it's not going to be coming out for a little while yet. So right now, I just want to give you some few pointers on how you can improve your Lee Sin before he does get nerfed. So first things first is the importance of the Tiamat. I was actually talking to Celiberry, you guys might know him, he's an Oceanic Challenger Lee Sin player, and he was telling me that pretty much everyone is going Tiamat now. They don't necessarily build it into anything after that, but they get it as their first item. So what they'll do is they'll start with Machete and the Rejuvenating Potion, and then just stay out until they've got enough gold to buy the Tiamat. With the way that Lee Sin works right now, he doesn't really need to recall too early unless he's been invaded or something like that. So you can just stay out for a really long time. You can focus on farming the jungle if you want to as well, but also because Lee Sin is Lee Sin, you can do a lot of ganks, that kind of stuff. And once you've got the gold for the Tiamat, you can go back, and this does give you quite a good early game power spike. Not only does it give you more damage, which helps your clear speeds, helps your 1v1 duels, helps your ganks, but the passive is extra nice in the Season 7 jungle because the AoE clears are really important for taking away the chicken camp and the Krug camp. I think for me personally, I've tried this new build a lot, and I really just like the way it feels having a Tiamat. I think that it just makes the whole thing go smoother, and of course the less time you have to spend clearing the jungle, the more time you can spend killing people, which is always a good stuff. Outside of that, Green Smite and War Enchant are pretty core, and then Black Cleaver is a good choice if you want to have more damage. If not, just rush the defensive items, things like Dead Man's Play, Randuin's, Hex Drinker if you're against AP as well. I think the more damage you have in your build on Lee Sin in Season 7, the better you'll be, generally speaking. But having said that, as the jungler, it can be a little bit hard to justify building loads of damage, especially if you fall behind. And because Lee Sin can fill out that tank role, kinda, not as well as like pure tanks, but he can kinda get away with it. But depending on how the game's going and the team's setup, you might want to put more effort into building tanky rather than just full damage. But either way, the Tiamat into Warrior Enchant early game is really nice at stomping games. And like I said earlier in the video, Lee Sin has a 56% win rate if he wins before 25 minutes. So he's really good in that early game, and this Tiamat really helps you in that as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and my thoughts about Lee Sin and his incoming nerf. If you did, of course, please do leave that thumbs up. You subscribe to me for more League of Legends content. You can find me on Facebook, on Twitter, and catch me streaming at twitch.tv/Foxdrop. Don't forget to check out my second channel for full gameplays every single day. But most importantly, boys and girls, have a awesome, amazing, great day. Thanks for checking the video out, and I will see you in my next video.